So a very big welcome to the introduction to the Supporting Our Branches Branch Resource Review briefing session. As I hope you'll have picked up, this session is very much targeted at those of you who don't know very much about the review, and we hope that by the end of the 90 minutes you'll feel better informed. Everything you hear today can be found in the report and motion 72, the links for which you'll have received by email. Before we begin, we will be running 2 polls this evening, one now and one at the end. Please could you submit your responses when prompted? And now to some housekeeping. Can I remind the audience of the importance, sorry, I've just poll, fill it in. So can I remind the audience of the importance of treating each other with dignity and respect at all times? I'm expecting that standard to be met during this event, as we would do in any other Unison meeting. We won't be using the chat function during the meeting, so please do not use the chat function. We encourage lots of contributions this evening. We'd like to hear from everyone, so we ask that you limit your questions to 1 in each section where we've got the time, and your contribution, if you can, please make it no longer than 2 minutes so we can reach as many of you as possible. Thank you. If you'd like to speak, use the raise your hand. So to do that, you go to the participants area and you'll find that facility in there. We've been joined by 2 BSL interpreters. They are Karen Green and Julie Fletcher. If you'd like to use their services, please look for them in the participants list and pin them to your screen. You do this in the participants list as well. We also have a captioning facility in Zoom. Julie Whitaker from CJ Captioning will be doing this. If you're using a separate screen, use the link sent in the registration email. If you don't have it, no problem. We can send you a dedicated link now. And if you'd like that, please raise your hand and we'll make sure that that gets sent out to you. We'd like to keep everyone on mute for the majority of the time that the presentation is being made. We'll unmute you if you wish to ask a question. And as I said, just raise your hand if you want to do that in the parts of the presentation and tonight where we've got questions open. The presentation's expected to last for about 45 minutes, but as I've said, there will be breaks for question. Raise your hand in the participant area, and we'll also hopefully have time for some questions at the end of the session. We have IT support at the meeting. Anyone with issues with IT, if you can please email the contact details that were in your joining instructions. Just a reminder that the session is being recorded. So if you're sitting comfortably, we'll begin. So the purpose of this presentation is to explain the background and rationale behind the set of proposals that the NEC endorsed on the 26th of February 2021. Your panel today is Josie Bird, sits on the NEC and is the chair of the Branch Resource Review. Lillian Mesa, regional convener for Unison Scotland. Maureen Lamarinel, NEC representative. Nikki Ramanandi, regional convener for Unison Northern Region. And myself, Becky Ty, regional convener for Unison Eastern Region. We all hold formal positions in the union, but ultimately we are activists just like yourselves. So today, we thought we'd remind you of the background to the Branch Resource Review, look at the whole package of proposals, including the funding scheme. And as I said, there will be an opportunity for questions at several points through the presentation. Before we look at what the proposals are, by way of background, who were the 24 lay members? Well, they were 12 activists from the NEC and 12 from the regions. So colleagues came from West Sussex to Lanarkshire, Belfast to Chelmsford. The work of the Branch Resource Review was divided into 4 small work projects looking at 4 areas, which were branches, regions, the National Union and finances. And after extensive discussions, the Branch Resource Review Group are delighted to make 14 recommendations to ensure a modern, flexible, supportive union moving forward. The response to the survey conducted in February 2020 indicated that what branches want to do most is, number one, recruit and retain members, number two, develop activists, and number three, support members with representation, in that order. Of course, there was some variation according to region or service group, but the overarching picture was this. And to do this, branch activists told us that they needed, number one, more time, number two, more regional support, and number three, more funding. Funding was the third priority there. The survey also told us that communications were an issue in some branches in Wales and the Eastern region, and participation was an issue raised by branches in Greater London and the South East. We followed up the survey with in-depth interviews with a cross-section of branches within the union, helped by the research company Britain Thinks. This confirmed that branches' needs vary widely, but what is required is a modern, flexible and supportive union. I'm now going to hand you over to Josie to take you through some of the package.
Thanks very much there, Becky. I've just unmuted myself. I almost forgot. So I'm just going to talk you through a little bit of detail of the package. These are the 14 proposals that are in the motion that we are proposing at the Special Delegate Conference. You can read all about them in the motion, and if you want to read about them in more detail, we've published the report on our website, on the Unison's website as well, so you can sit and do that at your leisure. So some of these you may have heard about, some of them may be new. I'm not going to read through them all now because there'll be an opportunity for different speakers to cover all of them to some degree as we go through the rest of the presentation. I just wanted an opportunity for people to see them, the breadth of issues that we focused on and that we've covered, and the different sort of areas. It's probably just worth highlighting here. We've grouped them into 3 areas: finance, systems and support. Actually, because the survey that we did said that time was what branch activists wanted the most, all of these proposals that we've got going forward should help branches save time in one form or another. Some of it very, very directly, for example, the facility time strategy, some of it in a far more indirect way, such as the branch portal. But all of them in some way, they should make branch activists' lives easier and therefore give them a little bit of time back. So if we move on now, we will move on to the proposed branch funding scheme. While it came third in the national survey, and we've made sure that we didn't make it the sole focus of the work we did, clearly we know it's still very important to branches, and what the finances look like is pretty important. What we've got here represented on the pictorial is what the proposed branch funding scheme looks like, and at the bottom there just a comparator for what it currently looks like, so you can see where the changes are. So the big change is that currently the total branch funding scheme costs us comes in at 23.5% of the union's annual income, and we're proposing to increase that to 25.5%. So that's a 2% increase, and obviously it's a percentage, so it fluctuates as the union's income fluctuates. But we costed that on the outturn at the end of 2019, and that represented approximately a £3.3 million increase in funding that we would be directing to branches going forward. And we've split that up. 23.5% goes directly into the branch funding formula for branches. That's a 0.5% increase on the 23% that currently goes to branches. And what we're also doing is proposing the introduction of a new branch support and organising fund. That's funded at 2% of annual income. What it would do is it would replace the regional pool that we currently have. For information, the regional pool is currently funded at 0.5% of our annual income. So that represents a 1.5% increase or a 4-fold increase on the regional pool. So it's really quite a significant investment and quite a significant increase in the funds and ability and freedom that that'll give with to regions to support branches, which of course was a huge priority that was highlighted to us in the survey as well. I'm not going to spend ages talking about the branch funding formula specifically here this evening, because what we have done is we've given a commitment that all branches will have an opportunity to find out what their own financial settlement will be. Clearly, this is not the forum to share that. That will be done on an individual basis for branches. So branches will have an opportunity to discuss their own circumstances in more detail on a one-to-one basis. But I'm happy to talk about some of the principles of that's underpinned our work. And if we move on to the next slide, I think these are some of probably the most asked questions that we get when we talk about things like the branch funding formula. And the first is really what drove our decisions and our discussions when we were coming up with our proposals. And really there were 3 absolute cornerstones that drove that. We knew that we wanted a branch funding formula. In fact, we wanted all of our proposals to be fair and equitable for all branches. And we think that we're really achieving that with the changes that we're proposing to the branch funding formula. We know we have a situation at the moment where some branches record high levels of surpluses. That is, they don't need to spend all of their funding each year. And that often happens to the same branches on an annual basis. So those branches naturally have accrued quite large reserves. We also have a situation where we have some branches, again, it tends to be the same branches year on year that have quite large deficits. That is, their annual branch income isn't enough to meet their annual costs. And those branches have low reserves, and indeed, they're going to encounter financial difficulties at some point in the future if they haven't already. So we wanted something that was fair. So rather than having these big disparities of big surpluses and big deficits, we want to bring all branches much closer to that break-even position where they're getting funded something which much more closely represents the amount of money that they need to spend in order to be vibrant and active branches. So we think what we've achieved is something which is much closer to that going forward. We needed this, of course, as well to be sustainable. We don't want this to be a one-year solution. We wanted to have confidence that we were going to be able to deliver this formula for all of the years that it remains in use, should it be agreed in June. And we needed to know that it was affordable. We needed to know that it wasn't going to destabilise the union, that it was something that we're going to be able to implement. So that's our first sort of cornerstones. The next question we get asked is, of course, we've got some changes to the branch funding formula at the moment that were agreed as part of motion 126, and why don't we just continue with those? Well, motion 126, which is the motion that drives the work that we're doing at the moment, was very clear that they were interim changes to the branch funding formula. They were not a long-term sustainable solution. And some branches absolutely have benefited from support through motion 126, but the package of proposals that we've developed now are much more holistic, well-rounded approach, and they meet the needs of all branches rather than just that core branches that have been struggling. So we think this is a much more comprehensive solution to the difficulties that branches have been facing, and we'll be able to get into that when we discuss the rest of the package as well. Where's the money coming from? Of course, £3.3 million is not an insignificant amount of money. There are some savings that we've identified within the package of proposals that we're taking to the Special Delegate Conference, and also there's some savings that come from the national budget as well. There'll be, over time, a shift of money and resources towards to ensuring that this additional funding continues to be a reality for branches and they continue to get that support, and we'll be implementing savings where appropriate. Significantly and importantly, I think it's worth saying, none of those savings should impact on branches in any sort of negative way. If we thought changes would have had a negative impact on branches, we've discounted those types of changes going forward. Question about branch industrial action and property funds. Will they be affected? Absolutely not. We have schemes for both of those types of funds. Those schemes continue unchanged going forwards. Where is the extra money targeted at in the new formula? We've made a number of changes, but the primary changes that we have made to the branch funding formula focus on the multiple employer aspect of the branch funding formula. And I really hope everyone can still hear me because my screens have gone off. So I'm just going to keep talking. I don't know if you can see me or hear me or what, but I shall try and fix my IT when I finish this section. So where's the new money? We have targeted that under multiple employers because we know one of the challenges that has been facing branches in recent implementation, the outsourcing and privatisation of members that's placed a strain on some branches and really causing difficulties. So we've sought to put more emphasis on that particular element in the branch funding formula. And the other area actually is being targeted at those branches that currently already have low reserves, because again, we know those are branches that are more likely to have been facing financial difficulties already. What that also does actually, it picks up some of the principles that were identified in motion 126, and it takes the short-term element of what some of the principles in motion 126 and tries to utilise them and realise them in a much more long-term and sustainable way, and takes away that short-term element from it. And finally, why did a staffing review not feature as part of this review? Well, it wasn't part of our remit. That would be covered under a separate part of the union. However, I do think it's worth recognising that in doing this review, there was a recognition that it has been a number of years since Unison had a staffing review, and it's been acknowledged by the incoming General Secretary and by the NEC's staffing committee that probably it is time that the union undertook a staffing review, and I believe that those very early discussions are starting to take place. But what we really felt was actually, given the work that we had done, that we had a very, very strong package, and we shouldn't let other parts of work in other parts of the union hold up the proposals that we were taking forward. If we move on to the next, oh, I should probably say before we go on to the next slide, we are planning to run dedicated webinars specifically about the branch funding formula over the next few weeks, as well as the branch support and organising fund, which Nikki is going to cover, and I shall try and get my screens to start working in the meantime. Thanks very much.
Okay, everybody, hello. So in terms of what is the branch support and organising fund, you can see the sums of money are up on the screen of what it would mean in terms of extra funding into the branches. And I have to say, and I'd echo Josie's words, it is a significant increase in terms of what we'll be able to do. And one of the things that we thought was really important was that we would have to start to organise to scale. Clearly, from when we were set up as a union, we have changed so much. So in terms of being able to respond to that agenda, we felt that we needed to change in terms of how we would do that. What's critical is it will replace the regional pool and the fighting fund. Clearly, there are some really good principles behind both of those, and we would draw on those, but it will replace that. And again, in terms of what is the governance here? Well, clearly it will be held at a regional lay level for flexible deployment in and across branches. And again, in terms of that governance, that would be a lay body that would agree those bids, and they would come from the lay side. Next slide. So some of the things we've been asked as part of the process is, what can an organising fund do? So can I pay for a caseworker with a branch support and organising fund? Yes, I can. Can I pay for organising staff with the branch support and organising fund? Yes, I can. Can there be equality bids to the branch support and organising fund? Absolutely, of course there can. Can I buy equipment with the branch support and organising fund? Yes, of course you can. And will the branch support and organising fund application be a nightmare? Absolutely not. What we do want, though, is we want it to be absolutely transparent, and we want it to be fair, and we want there to be a consistency right across the regions about how people will access the money, and there will be accountability back. So if those bids are denied, there would be a rationale about why those bids would be denied, and there would be a set criteria that every bid is set against. So in addition, we wanted to touch upon the subsidised Casework system. So in terms of Casework, as you know, it was introduced following a motion to conference from branches and has already seen over 100 branches sign up to it. Casework was a popular discussion item in the consultative events, so the review group has taken the decision to make it available to branches at 50% reduction for branches of less than 2,000 members. And if this motion goes through, this would mean that 75% of our branches would benefit from this proposal. So, it would make things a lot easier for, activists like us who are doing daily casework.
Okay, thanks very much, Becky. Hi, everybody. Over the next few slides, you'll see other elements of the package. You may also wonder why so many so-called business as usual elements are in the package, but I think that they need to be there because given the extra backing from a conference mandate, as well as the commitment to set up an implementation group that will ensure that the measures in our package will happen and not fall by the wayside as we go forward. The investment for the RMS upgrade of 2.3 million and the branch resources review process identified the urgency of upgrading the RMS sooner rather than later, and that's why the project was expedited. And if this motion goes through in June, the rollout will begin shortly after. Similar to this was the feedback from branch treasurers. They had told us that support was needed with processing expenses, and the team at the Unison Centre then devised a module to deal with expenses within Alba. And again, if this motion goes through, the rollout will begin shortly after the special conference. The biggest ever revamp of the organising school since the removal of the Union Learning Fund has been key to a lot of our thinking around ensuring that training is provided both to activists and members alike. And then we've got the new National Procurement Service. We know that many of you have had to invest in equipment during the pandemic in order to keep your branches working. So a one-stop support service like this has the possibility of saving branches like you and like me time by making the purchasing process a lot easier. Though we do recognise that it's not always the cheapest option, but as trade unionists, we should always be concerned with the employment rights and conditions of working people around the world. When these workers are involved in producing goods for use by public bodies in the UK, and we have a real opportunity to influence employers and take the lead when they are looking at procurement, and that being an ethical one that we would support. So what is the branch service portal? The feedback in the consultation process repeatedly indicated that branches needed easy access to resources. And if, like me, you find it extremely difficult to navigate our current website to find information quickly and timely, that is very difficult, I think, at the moment. So the NEC, if the NEC endorses the package, this will be another one-stop site for activists under time pressure, with content driven by activists on request. And I think it needs to be said here that many of our employers are now trying to access our website to look for information about what we're going to be saying to them. Our bargaining papers are on there. So I think that this one-stop portal where login will be is key to saving us a lot of time when we're trying to do branch work. And we expect this to grow and be responsive to feedback as it takes off. So facility time, this was referred to earlier. Building on our successful facility time work to date, it's clear from our engagement activity that branches have got experiences to share. This has to be a topic that people really want to campaign on, and we have to find a way to make this campaign as high profile and as important as all our other campaigns. If the motion passes again in June at the Special Delegate Conference, work on this will be started immediately in July. The centralised accommodation and travel booking service, this is something that we looked long and hard at. We took on what branches were telling us about trying to find hotels for conferences. So we are looking to introduce a centralised accommodation and booking service for delegates attending Unison conferences. This will provide a one-stop service for all booking and queries related to conference travel and accommodation, and hopefully take the stress out of branches having to make those arrangements. All branches would be able to use the centralised and pooled booking system for their travel through the union's national travel provider for national rulebook conferences. And also, like I say, to save time and money. The costs would go to the Unison Conference Office. So the branch wouldn't have to outlay it initially. It would all be done through the Conference Office. There'd be no reclaiming after the event through the Conference Centre. We also plan to introduce a reasonable adjustment pool, which will be accessible to all branches. This again, we believe, is extremely important to ensure that there is increased participation and nobody is restricted from attending any of our democratic processes. The bargaining support unit, this will promote better existing bargaining support guides, gather regular and insightful feedback on content currently available, continue to build the bargaining agreements database, and create and deliver resources in line with the branch activists' needs. Online meetings, well, we're all very used to those now. How many times have we all said you're on mute? Any savings from online meetings will be banked and ploughed back directly into branches. The review felt that all national and regional committees after the pandemic should offer hybrid online and physical attendance at all meetings. National and regional IT and meeting room facilities would need to be reviewed, and that is already underway. The National Disabled Members Committee representatives were clear that choice was important for them, but that is fastly improving. None of the current online meeting software systems meet all the needs of every one of our activists. So it is something that we are working on, and we will work on that with our disabled members national committee to ensure that we get it as right as we possibly can. Affiliations, as you know, Unison affiliates to many organisations, from the TUC to the Labour Research Department to Cuba Solidarity Campaign. Not only do we affiliate at national level, but also regions and branch levels. We have recommended that we publish a list of all Unison affiliations that nationally we support and to what value we support them. This will help branches and regions make informed decisions when they receive requests to affiliate. Meetings to discuss the Code of Good Branch Practice are already taking place. There is a review that was recommended by different parts of the work group, of the BRR work group, and it was agreed that it needed to be updated in at least 3 areas: online meeting procedures, easier and quicker arrangements for annual general meetings, and encouragement of branches to sharing resources locally. And then it comes down to the implementation group. So if motion 72 is passed at the special conference, there will need to be an implementation group. This will be lay-led, and they will ensure that all items of motion 72 package are delivered following the conference, which is key, and being lay-led is an absolute must for that going forward. That's it from me, Chair. Thank you.
Colleagues, you can all hear me. Thanks to the colleagues that are still with us going through this presentation. What I'm going to do is I've got a couple of slides just to share with you. Really, it's some summing up around the information that you've already had. Maybe just to recap and go into a bit more detail around some of the process issues. So I won't keep you long, and I'll go through this as quickly as possible, because for us as a review team, it's hugely important that we hear from you, the members on this call. So this slide, colleagues, really just focuses in around some of the process issues that